The sister of the Antifa crackpot killer in Portland has come out saying, quote, "I wouldn't say this counts as bad news." She basically goes on to describe how her brother was losing it and was becoming more and more extreme. She thought that angry masses would come for him, and she's worried that that he could become a martyr. She's right. He is going to become a martyr for the far left. They've already been writing his name in the street saying police have killed him. And the right is already calling for some kind of retaliation. So the question is, was this the shot heard round the world? And it may be, because some right-wing groups are saying straight up the shots have been fired and a hot civil war may come next. And I certainly hope not. I mention this often. People will criticize me for saying civil war because nobody wants to hear it. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe it's not true. Sure. Everyone's saying, shh, just don't say the words. That won't make reality change. It won't make this go away. I'm sorry. I'm going to show you some left-wing and right-wing sources talking about the real potential for civil war. And I'm going to show you a small town paper saying, look at what's happening around you. You will not see, in my opinion, massive groups marching, state lines. That's never how it is. But something big is coming. I don't know what it'll look like. It could be more like a coup, meaning left-wing and right-wing groups of only a few hundred or 1,000 are fighting in D.C. and then eventually someone takes the White House. Or it could be government officials, people who work in the government who hold far left views, people in the government who hold more American, libertarian, or liberal, classical liberal views. And they clash, and then eventually someone takes over. It could be as simple as, come this election, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, for some reason, have both been declared the victors, and they're standing on the lawn of the White House, pointing at each other, yelling to a Secret Service agent, arrest this man. I don't know for sure. But first, let's talk about how the crackpot killer's family actually views him. The Daily Mail says, exclusive, sister of Portland Antifa gunman reacts to his death after he was shot dead by U.S. Marshals. As he voices concerns he'll become a martyr, an excuse for more violence. They say April Reinl spoke exclusively with DailyMail.com hours after brother Michael Reinl's death at the hands of Federal Fugitive Task Force on Thursday night. Reinl was shot by U.S. Marshals in Lacey, Washington, after becoming the target of a Portland police murder investigation into the death of a right-wing protester, Aaron Danielson. His school teacher sister learned of her brother's death when she was contacted by Daily Mail. In an emotional phone call, the sister of the alleged murderer, an Antifa member, said she was already bracing herself for the news of his death, but believed it would be at the hands of the right-wing group Patriot Prayer, whose member he allegedly shot dead at the protest last week. I wouldn't say at this point that this counts as bad news. It's just more news, Reinhold's sister said. Honestly, I didn't expect it to be the police. I expected it to be the people who had a contract out for him. I was expecting the angry population of people who were out for blood. The bereaved sister said she was worried her brother would become a martyr and an excuse for more violence after she reported the police killing. Now we've got two martyrs. That's how the two opposing sides are going to want to spin it, she said. Hatred begets hatred. Anybody who saw him in their eyes standing up for the plight of black people being killed by an officer is going to validate their feelings in their minds of all the anger they have, whether or not it's correct or righteous. As the news spread of his reported killing at the hands of federal officers on Thursday night, Antifa group Salish Coast Antifa tweeted, "Rest in power, Michael Forrest Reinl." The news hit just as a direct action protest march was planned to begin in Portland as the city nears 100 days of protests and riots that have rocked the area. April told DailyMail.com she believed her brother would have tried to fight with federal officers sent to catch him fleeing to the small town 120 miles north of Portland. I wouldn't be surprised if he reacted badly to a situation just like he reacted badly to the situation at the riots. He always acted impulsively, letting the worst emotions guide his actions. And then he tried to rationalize afterwards. So I'm not surprised he got himself killed. I'm surprised a police officer did it. Think about this. Testimony from his own sister. What did this guy do? They were walking down the street. They saw some Trump supporters. He drew his gun and killed the guy. And then he tried rationalizing it afterwards on Vice News. His own sister says as much. Both circumstances, all of these circumstances are tragic. I don't want anybody to get hurt. Not this guy. You've got some sad photographs. Here's the dude as a Boy Scout in 1980. A Boy Scout became a communist, far left, whatever you want to call him, insurgent with a tattoo on his neck. That's radicalization. How do you go from a Boy Scout to whatever that was? Radicalization. To where he'd walk around armed and prepare to kill a man in the street. That's a tragic story. We don't have two martyrs. The problem here is that you have the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. Now, in my view, based on the video evidence and testimony from witnesses, Rittenhouse was defending himself, and he was not there in Kenosha with the intent to cause harm. He had a medical kit with him. The intent of Kyle Rittenhouse was to go to Kenosha to protect. The intent of people like Reinhold was to go to Portland to destroy. Now, they'll tell you we're protecting marginalized communities by destroying. That's not the same thing. There was no destruction from Kyle Rittenhouse, and he had no intention on hurting people unless he was attacked. He said so in viral videos. He needed to protect himself. But he provided medical assistance to the far leftists who were out there that night. When they attacked him, he defended himself. And according to several witnesses who I've spoken to personally, who were there on the ground watching it happen, if he didn't, he would have died. Now, the reason I highlight this story from his sister is to point out the radicalization and her thoughts and views on potential martyrdom. I think she's right. I mean, his sister sounds pretty savvy. I mean that literally. She said, I am relieved and also disappointed by that. At least, referring to the police killing her brother. At least it wasn't vigilante justice that got him. Because I think that would actually be worse. It would feed the violence a lot more. But at the same time, the nationwide dispute is very highly black people versus officers. And now you have a member of Antifa killed by an officer. So I can imagine things are going to get worse again. His own sister says he's a member of Antifa. The school teacher and mother of two said the situation left her feeling hopeless for the country and worried for her brother's two children, an 18-year-old son and 11-year-old daughter, who were already devastated by the news their father could be a murderer. I'm pretty sure they're already both pretty thoroughly devastated. I don't imagine they're going to take it well. As estranged as we are, as much as I knew it was coming one way or another, I've been saying to people for a while, if he doesn't turn himself in, he's going to get himself killed. I fear for the nation. I'm mourning the loss of a brother I barely knew. I'm mourning the loss of potential for good every living being possesses, she told dailymail.com. I know there's nothing I could have done differently to keep him from going down this path, but I wish it was different. I have sadness for this whole frickin' situation. Even though he really screwed up, I was really hoping he would take responsibility for what happened with dignity, so that whatever end he faced would be something that meant something good. Now it's just going to bring more pain for more people, more anger, more violence. I feel like this nation is further away from peace forever, and we've had far too many victims and not enough change. Reinhold came close to admitting killing in an interview with Vice News broadcast around the same time. They closed in. I want you to think about the statements he made to Vice News when he was basically saying that a group of vehicles, these dangerous Trump supporters, were armed. The guy was paranoid and delusional. That is what is happening to the far left in this country. And it's what's happening to the Democratic Party. And I am not trying to be hyperbolic or derogatory of the Democrats. I will ask you the question I've asked now several times for context on those who haven't heard it. Is it radical to propose border security for this country? The answer is no. We've done that forever. As long as I've been alive, we've had border security. Several Democrats proposed border barriers. Does Trump kick it up a notch? A little bit, yeah, but ultimately he just reinforced bollard fencing in select areas. Is it radical to suggest we should have a moratorium on deportations? Yes. Is it radical to suggest we should decriminalize border crossings? Yes. That is far outside of what we've done in this country. Is it radical to suggest abolishing private health care? Yes. Is it radical to march around believing that all police are hunting down and killing minorities? Yes. It literally does not happen. These people have been radicalized on media. They've lost their minds. And now this lunatic Reinhold was standing in a normal intersection in a normal city, and he saw a Trump supporter who was just outside of his own home. Reported by Oregon Live, the Oregonian. The man who died was just near his own home in Portland. But this guy, when he looked through this lens of psychosis, far left media, he did not see a man walking down the street. He saw a bunch of cars full of Nazis with guns. And that's not what happened. We can see in the video, albeit a grainy video, this guy lost his mind. So what happened when the cops came for him? He didn't see police officers trying to stop a dangerous killer, him. He saw himself as the righteous hero fighting against a whole bunch of evil demon Nazis coming to get him. He even said that the police are in league with the far right. You walked up to a random dude on the street and shot him, bro. You're nuts. Dude needed help. Well, I'll tell you what, man. We're starting to see it. This is a Twitter account. Someone replying straight to me, surprisingly, where I said there isn't going to be an election. This is a tweet from Elijah Schaefer. He was on the ground covering this. More shootings tonight. We are in civil war. This guy responded to me. To everyone instigating a possible civil war from all sides, let me give you a little bit of advice. Many of us served and fought in the wars. When our time was done, we came back to the USA to start over and live in peace. It wasn't us who kneeled on the neck of a man until he died. It wasn't us to retaliate by kneeling on the neck of a toddler saying BLM now, MF. You see, war is hell. Millions of you do not quite grasp this concept. We have been to hell, lived in hell, climbed out of hell, and don't want to go back to hell. If you keep trampling on the peace we fought for, earned, and love, then when the first shot gets fired, you will force us back to hell, and we will show you the brutal realities of hell. Y'all better work this S out before we do, because I guarantee you, you are not ready for this. I completely agree. I don't know who this person is, but they're completely correct. I've not been in full-scale international war. I have witnessed a revolution on the ground in Egypt. I have been in Ukraine at the start of what people were calling a civil war and now kind of became more of a separatist thing. I have been in Brazil. I have been in many circumstances that I would just call civil uprising or civil unrest. Technically some civil war, I guess, but not nearly as intense as like the Eastern Ukraine stuff. I've mostly been dealing with uprisings, riots, things like that. Egypt was probably the most intense of a place I've been to where people were shooting at each other with these makeshift shotguns, and I saw some people die. And I ended up leaving once things got too hot because I realize what this means. I have seen the precursor to how bad it gets. So when these lefties, when these media people come out and say, everything in Portland is fine. I'm at the park right now and people are eating cheeseburgers and playing a game of soccer. That's what it looked like before mass civil war erupted. And even during the Syrian civil war, you could still go to Damascus and go clubbing. Life doesn't just stop because war is going on, but it does become scary and dangerous. In response to this post, the Oath Keepers said, the first shot has been fired, brother. Civil war is here right now. We'll give Trump one last chance to declare this a Marxist insurrection and suppress it as his duty demands. If he fails to do his duty, we will do ours against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Stewart. Man, I certainly hope not, Stewart. I certainly hope you all sit back and keep calm and let law enforcement deal with this. But I cannot deny the reality of what people are saying. These are the Oath Keepers. They're I guess they're described as a right-wing militia. I'm careful in just, trying to throw around, titles or whatever. The Oath Keepers have straight up said the civil war is here. I've been saying something similar. Now, a lot of people don't like to say it because, of course, I get smeared. People are claiming that I want civil war. Quite the opposite. I'm bringing it up because I don't want it. I want to sit back and play video games, dude, have a slice of pizza and mind my own business. I don't want to record videos about an Antifa lunatic who killed a guy. I don't want to wake up in the morning and see in my country what I witnessed in other countries. I don't want to see that. And I know this guy who tweeted about being in war, he knows full well, way better than I do. I take his word for it. I got close to that line. I watched people pull out guns and I said, I'm getting out of here. I don't want to be there. These people went, they saw it, and when they say, you do not understand, I say, I hear you, bro. I simply looked through the window of war and said, and I turn around behind me and say, everybody, you do not want what's inside that building right there. The people who actually served in combat are the ones who are coming out of that building saying, pray you never go inside. And I'm like, look at that guy. I watched what was going on. The left doesn't care. They don't seem to have a cohesive strategy. There's more and more protests erupting every night. They're being radicalized by a media. But for the most part, I think the people who are fomenting this, who will come out and claim that routine policing is a nightmare hellscape of, slave corps hunting people down to kill them. They want it to happen. They want the chaos. They want the destruction. I did a documentary on systemic racism. I think, I guess the definition has shifted, right? The general idea was simple. We have had in this country race-based law. Okay, you go back in time. We got rid of those things. But guess what? The systems that were created under racialized law and policy and practice still exist today. Even though we've made many of these things illegal, we haven't gotten rid of the ramifications of these past efforts. That's a system. Now, I guess people have muddied the definition and no one knows what institutional or systemic racism really means. My understanding at the time was that systemic meant we did something racist and it created a system, like a network of roots that have negative consequences, like two different train tracks. That's the way I view it. With some people, although the trains you can now freely cross, one side is still suffering under policies that happened a while ago. And how do we rectify that? Over time. We are doing a good job of solving these problems. It won't be done overnight. Now, systemic and institutional racism are mixed. Institutional racism is the stuff the left really talks about, where they say all cops are evil. I did a documentary on this, and they wanted me to include a line claiming that police are derivative of slave catching groups. Of are you what? Well, police existed in the UK. What are you talking about? The police, or England or whatever. We have police. They enforce the law. It's ridiculous propaganda, but that's where they've gone. I don't know how you deal with this kind of psychosis. They're running around screaming that cops are hunting them down when they're not. But if they truly believe that, and they're as paranoid and delusional as Michael Reinl and that dangerous, what do we do about it? The last thing we want is a civil war. Now, I have said over and over again that the likelihood, in my opinion, is high. But there is a way to stop it. The police are not the same as the right-wing groups in Portland. The police could stop all of this. We do not want a police state. I warn you. And I said it. The far left is going to engage in this kind of nightmarish behavior. And regular people will beg the government for a police state. In Chicago, I'm being told by these journalists who are on the ground, there are more cops you've ever seen just everywhere, checkpoints everywhere. That's what the left does. When you attack the beast, you don't kill it, you scar it. You thicken its hide. And that's what's happening. They don't have the ability to shut down law enforcement or do any of these things. Now, at a cultural and institutional level, that's where they come up behind and try and kneecap these institutions from the inside out. And that's the risk. Talking Points memo says, with itchy trigger fingers, some right-wingers predict the next civil war has finally arrived. Yeah, and they mention what Rhodes said. A lot of people are talking about it. This is what civil war will look like. You'll be in your home, you'll go to the store, you'll pick up your groceries, and life will seem normal. I'm not trying to exaggerate or downplay what's going on. I said this when I was in Egypt during the revolution. I took a trip over to Heliopolis, went to the mall, got a kebab. It was good. Bought a cell phone. Life carries on. The conflict is happening in other places. Different groups were clashing in different areas. I'll tell you what you can expect. When you look at the Syrian civil war, which was very, very, very serious, that may be way more than we can expect here. But in Damascus, life was carrying on like normal with intermittent attacks. If this escalates, what will happen? Insurgent uprisings in certain areas. We're seeing protests for months now. In 50 to 100 years, they might just call those battles or circumstances within the civil war, conflict. You will be minding your own business in your hometown. And then one day, your city will be burned to the ground. People will show up and be fighting each other. Like Kenosha. The people in Kenosha did not ever believe that their small town would be subjected to this kind of mass rioting, looting, destruction, and death. And it happened. Many of you will never see anything. Some of you will be surprised it finally came to your house. It's kind of like a lottery ticket. Obviously, the conflict can't be everywhere all at once. And that's why you need to be careful about the extremists' allies in media. They'll post a video from Washington, D.C. of people sitting in a park. Well, clearly, you can go look at what, like, the revolution, the American Revolution took a span of like 20 years. The war, the actual hot conflict was for several years. Same thing for the Civil War. Do you think people like were always just fighting nonstop every day, waking up with bombs going off? No, they'd wake up, they'd have a meal, they'd hang out with their family, and for months see literally nothing. They'd hear tales of a battle over here and over there, and they carried on. And then one day it ended. That's what we're going to see. Kenosha, that's a battle. Maybe not the most extreme. Look at this photo. People on the left and the right ready to face off and fight each other. Different symbols adorning their groups. You have ideological belligerence now. At some point, we will need the Insurrection Act to shut all of this down. I don't care if you're left or right wing. If you're out there in the streets causing chaos, fighting with people, it needs to be stopped. The problem is the governments in these left-wing areas, they favor these groups, and they will not allow Trump to stop it. The only thing that can happen then is street clashes. So where do you think this goes? That's why I'm telling people you do not want this. That's why I've repeatedly been critical of the Proud Boys for saying they're going to go to Portland. No, stay away. De-escalate. Have your protest on your own ground, on your own turf, and they still might come to you, but it's very, very different from you going to Portland, especially after this. We do not want escalation. How dare people say that I in any way would want anything like this? That's despicable and disgusting. But these people have no idea what it's like, and they have no idea what's really going on. And many of them just want to live in their fantasy world that the fight isn't coming or the fight isn't here. Walk away. I'm going to leave you with this. There's a funny video of a martial artist, and he tells all of his students he's going to teach them the ultimate technique to guarantee you win any fight one-on-one. And then everyone's all excited. Whoa, what's the ultimate technique? And as he gets ready to fight, he turns around, wiggles his arms, and runs full speed out of the room, and everyone laughs and claps. He comes back in and says, any fight you can avoid is a fight you've won. It's a stupid game, and the only way to win is to not play. However, I recognize we are facing a serious existential threat from extremists on the far left. Law enforcement needs to handle this. There needs to be a political victory, and then Trump can push out critical race theory. Then law enforcement can come in and shut down the extremists. But I will tell you this. Right now, the lines that are being formed are the far left extremists against the right and law enforcement at the same time. I call for stability and for law enforcement to take care of handle these laws the way they're supposed to do it. And I do not want random groups to be confronting anybody. The police will take care of it. And if they can't, Trump made one of the smartest moves possible. Deputizing state police in Oregon. When these people get arrested, the feds will prosecute. They are doing it. They're taking care of it. Stop the escalation. Do not go out and confront these people. If the cops can't do it, I understand there's a serious conflict. Defend yourself. That I recognize. That I respect. I'm just saying, don't armor up and go out like these people are doing. Look, I'm going to tell you, man, a lot of people don't like it when I say it, but you are not, this is asymmetrical. You are not fighting on even ground. They have the high ground. They control the media and cultural institutions, which means, yeah, it's hard mode for you. But you know what? You need to play it smart. Don't interrupt your enemy when they're making mistakes. Let law enforcement take care of all of these illegal acts. Let the DHS and the feds prosecute the criminals. And you can stay home, do your thing, but speak up online, speak up at your jobs, and let people know you are not okay with what the far left is doing, and do not give them ammunition. This needs to de-escalate, and it needs to stop. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast, and I will see you all then.